Hi there, and welcome to episode 104 of the ADHD Adults podcast. I'm James Brown. Let's face it, there's no joke here, just drugs. And as usual, I'm joined by the man who makes drugs look cool, mostly by not taking them. And, of course, the woman who's like a natural high, and the come down that follows, Mrs ADHD, who isn't here. She's got a woman's cold, which is scientifically proven to be far less virulent than man flu. So I'm going to fill in for her bit then. Ding. So Alex, hi.
Far out, Daddy-o.
I mean, the thing is, that's your level, isn't it? That's bang on your kind of cultural reference point for any illicit substance, isn't it?
I literally Googled, how do drug people say hello?
And that is how we say hello. And Sam...
we?
Yeah.
I mean, shit.
And Sam, hi.
Are you just reading off the script, James, even though you've just said she's not here?
I said I'm going to fill in her parts, Al.
Okay, go on then.
And Sam, hi. Hiya. How are you both? Mrs ADHD first. Oh, God, everything's terrible. Or is it brilliant? I don't know, but either way, it's been that way forever. Oh, okay.
I'm going to fucking kill you.
Yep. And Alex, he asks jadedly, how are you?
I'm excellent, thanks, James. Do you know, actually, I'm not. I've had a bit of a nightmare. I've had injuries to myself with my busted knee. And then yesterday, all day in the X-ray department of hospital with a broken collarbone for my 4-year-old, who I'd been ibuprofening for 3 days and telling that she has to move it because it's just ligament pain. And she's got a fracture. Oh, God. But, and it's a big but, James. The listener numbers are very high, apparently, the numbers guy tells me. Not sure why. It might be because the listeners themselves are high. God knows. One of them sent us a letter.
Via Ouija board, I assume.
Yeah, it is a bit bleak, isn't it? Yes, no, it is from a Robert from Kidderminster in a way. It says, interesting episode on men and women. Did you know that James was born both of them? And we had to choose one, so we chose neither. He's like an action man down there. Smooth. I didn't know that, Robert. Thank you.
Smooth.
We've had a real letter there. I'm going to read it out. You ready?
Yeah.
Can I?
No.
It's from an Arjun. I'm not going to read out his second name because I don't know if we've asked. God knows. It says, you guys are amazing, which could be taken one of two ways. I've been listening to your podcast on Spotify all day. I somehow always felt I had some symptoms of ADHD, but never got it checked. Listening to your podcast helped me relate to all that I've been going through my entire life. I'm 26 and literally yesterday, I kind of solidified my belief that I've always had ADHD. The relief I've been feeling all day. Man, I can't even put it into words. Thank you so much. More power to you. That is so lovely. And a big red heart. That is genuinely lovely. And thank you. And we love it very much.
It is. Thank you, Arjun.
What was that, James? Internationally? Great question. We are up by one country on my list, it says here, to 154 countries, just a single country in a week. What are the chances? I think you know. This week's country is almost certainly not Luxembourg, where one of the languages spoken is the brilliantly named Luxembourgish. So a hearty moyen and wie geht et to the Luxembourgian dog that has to listen to us as company when their owners go out for the day.
It's a non-gendered dog then, isn't it, by the sound of it? Oh, yeah. My car's non-gendered, which is true, actually, Sam. Yeah, you call your car they, them, don't you? Anyway, thanks for that, both. As usual, this bottle of Koros that your mum bought from the town market, which costs £2.99 and actually smells of beaver cheese of a podcast, is a tragedy in 3 parts. We choose a theme. Last week, we talked about ADHD in males and females. And this week, we're focusing on the topic of psychedelics. Largely because lots of people who are waiting either for an assessment or for titration or are struggling to get the NHS to accept their contract are asking what other things work and are exploring other options. 3 parts, as usual, include ear-fingeringly bad evidence-based information delivered in pseudo-English by Alex the Psycho Education Monkey.
Hello.
Our personal reflections, that's all 3 of us, on the theme. And top tips, tip topics, spunk jumping, whatever it is now. Obviously, big disclaimer klaxon.
Klaxon.
It says we're not advocating for the use of illicit substances. But as lots of people are taking them, it's important to get the evidence out there, and whole species shouldn't be made illegal. So James Dean, crack on with your drug talk.
Did you say beaver cheese?
Yes, I did. Yes.
What is that even? Is it cheese beavers eat?
You're not a Monty Python fan, are you? From the cheese shop sketch, he asks for Venezuelan beaver cheese.
I mean, I forget everything. Don't know what I'm a fan of. Right. Okay. Are you ready? Psychedelics can be defined in the Oxford English Dictionary.
No.
Yeah, you fell in my trap, James, because we do have to define them. I did a thing. The definition in this case is useful. Oh, went squeaky. So the word psychedelic came originally from correspondence between Aldous Huxley and psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond. You'll know Aldous Huxley, James, because he's the grandson of Thomas Huxley, Darwin's bulldog.
I've also read The Doors of Perception and Brave New World, both Aldous Huxley books, Alex, so fuck you.
I prefer it, honestly. I prefer his granddad's work, genuinely. Before this, they were sometimes brilliantly called, with a PH, Fantastica. I mean, that we should still call them that. But psychedelic comes from psych, meaning mind, obviously, but delic means for manifesting or creating, so mind creations. Anywho, James, the classical three psychedelics that people have heard of are the very famous lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD 25, but also mescaline. That's the Mexican cactus one. Is it peyote or coyote? I don't know.
Coyote. Then again, Peyote Ugly would have been a better film, wouldn't it?
Is it peyote? I've only ever seen it written
Peyote
down.
is one of the cacti that you can get mescaline from. There are two others, but it's in far lower. Oh, shut up.
Right. No, that's like indigenous potions, isn't it? And then there's psilocybin, which is mushroom soup. So what do those three classic ones have in common? They all activate a specific neurotransmitter receptor in the brain. So individual neurotransmitter serotonin, and it's one receptor, serotonin 2A, or 5-HT2AR, some people call it. Does that sound familiar? It's because we've mentioned serotonin many times before. The ADHD medication Lisdex also increases serotonin activity, and actually probably the other ADHD meds too do as well. To do. And for years, rightly or wrongly, drugs that increase serotonin levels or activity in the brain have also been used to treat depression. Are you doing Sam again?
Yeah, I'm doing Sam throughout the whole episode. Yeah,
okay. Because we've written questions for her, and you think instead of just not doing them, you should do a what is Brummy Stoke accent?
I don't. It's meant to be Stoke. It's meant to be Stoke. So the questions are always in as placeholders, and then obviously she just asks her own thing. But I'm going to go with the placeholders. So, but you don't trip off Prozac. At least I didn't.
You know, you are writing the justification for divorce and recording it, right?
Yeah.
That's very true, Sam. Because it's a different receptor. It's still serotonin, but it's 2B instead of 2A. There's a Shakespeare joke in there that can't be asked. So that's serotonin 2B. We're talking about 2A, which is found in different parts of the brain and does different stuff. Anywho, so these classical psychedelics activate the other serotonin receptor, and that is the thing that can cause this euphoria or change in perception of stuff, change in thought processes, even change in mood.
This is, I think this is in danger of becoming the shittest TED Talk ever.
It's got a good competition, though, hasn't it? I'm not wearing a polo neck.
No, exactly. So you know what I'm going to ask, obviously, which I always do at this point.
No, I'm not getting there yet, James. Ding. Anyway, again, psychedelics have been used in healing, inverted commas, getting high, for thousands of years. And when they were mass synthesized in the 1890s up till the 1950s, psychiatrists then got interested because, and this is amazingly awful, they thought they could introduce psychosis to patients and then study psychosis.
Wow.
They were giving people psychosis just out of interest. Unbelievable.
Mate,
what they actually found which is, really shocking. Not surprising, though, which is why a lot of psychiatrists started self-using them and sharing them with mates and so on, was that they were very pleasant and interesting. It says here, everyone, apart from me, has heard of that Albert Hoffman bicycle story after he accidentally exposed himself to some LSD crystals, which he'd made himself, or he originally made them himself. And he got some really interesting effects in terms of mental health and started some really interesting reportings, or that did start some mental health reportings in the scientific literature.
Sorry. We're leaving reportings there. Reportings, that's acceptable. Now, I know your knowledge of grammar exceeds mine by quite a bit. Reportings.
So the suffix ing is a way of nominalization of any verb. It's how you create a noun from a verb.
I hate you.
How can you not know that? To shop, we're going shopping.
And then if multiple people go shopping, then it's shoppings.
Multiple shopping trips, would be shoppings, different shoppings.
My God, I hope you're wrong, and I hope we get correspondence. Anyway, carry on.
Correspondings. That's ridiculous. Anywho, this led to LSD being packaged as Delicid or Delicide, and it was started to be sent out all the way across the globe for psychiatrists to literally and figuratively monkey around with.
Oh, it's Sam again, isn't it? For ADHD.
It really is like having her in the room. All right, James, I'll get to the blooming ADHD, bub. I assumed James was going to ask that. And never mind, I'm not doing it anymore.
West Country.
Before I do, though, firstly, a massive wave of research happened before the war on drugs. And this research showed that psychedelic-assisted therapy was rapidly and successfully treating some, for example, ASD, autism, communication issues, some addiction issues, alcoholism, drug use, depressive disorders, end-of-life anxiety. Much later on, research started to show that psychedelics also maybe successfully treated OCD and PTSD. The list goes on. Has to be said, though, as a critical voice, that these were not amazingly well done studies. They're small because, well, it's hard to do research with drugs, especially illegal ones.
Yeah, in an academic sense, it's hard to do research with them. Lots of people have, researched
done their own research.
Done their own research. Are we there yet, Al? Quickly.
Yes. What about ADHD? Now, theoretically, or James wrote that, hypothetically, it makes sense that these compounds may work as classical psychedelics tend to switch off the classic default mode network, the demon. You might remember that's the inverted commas, rabbit ears, James, daydreaming part of the brain that leads to mind wandering in ADHD types. And equally, there were some, again, shittily small studies, not because of the researchers, because it's not funded properly, that have shown microdosing of psychedelics may be superior to placebo for a range of psychiatric disorders. So obviously, increasingly, people are starting to do that themselves, microdosing psychedelics to self-medicate ADHD. So what they do is they take a sub-therapeutic dose. Nice. I see what you've done. It says in brackets in the script, it's only sub-therapeutic if you're not, Alex. Says he has the capacity for drugs of a toddler. There's a lot going on with that sentence we need to dive into. So taking sub-therapeutic dose on alternative days or in a similar pattern, people have been doing for themselves.
Sam's got a lot of fucking lines in this podcast. I'm going to add one here. James, didn't you mean sub-threshold? Yes, Sam, I did mean sub-threshold. And Alex just read the bit that I'd written, because obviously therapeutic would be therapeutic. Have you got another question, Sam? Yes. Does it work?
It's a great question, Sam. Continuing to make James look stupid, and I mean that literally in this case. So does it work? Does microdosing sub-threshold psychedelics work? Well, in one word, it depends who you ask. There's more than one word. Purely looking at the research, what they've reported is this, that there's one low-quality case report shows or describes microdosing helping one adult's ADHD symptoms. There's self-reported, which is obviously also low-quality evidence, effectiveness of microdosed psilocybin, mushroom soup, being significantly higher compared to that of like conventional treatments for ADHD, and also anxiety disorders. Again, microdosing psilocybin, self-medicating, also probably improved some comorbid psychiatric issues. There were decreases and increases in ADHD symptoms and well-being, respectively. There wasn't any improved performance on time perception. And that one, interesting, that used a validated ADHD symptom scale. But compared to placebo in one trial, there were no improvements. So there may be elements of ritualism or self-bias or something like that.
So to summarize, if you can, because you're making drugs boring, which is an achievement.
Yeah. It might work. There's not a lot of good evidence, but absence of evidence and evidence of absence are not the same thing. So it might be that we need more. What we need is the larger placebo control trial that hopefully will be coming out later this year.
Brilliant. So now you've ruined drugs for a whole generation. We'll take a break and we'll be back for all three of our, oh God, personal reflections. I'm not.
Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Governor.
What? Welcome back to episode 104 of the ADHD Adults podcast. This is part 2, personal reflections, and you're joined as always by James, Sam, and Alex. We're talking about everything psychedelics and ADHD. I'm gonna have to start with you, James, because I can't honestly. It's so shrill. Sam's definitely Sam.
Don't listen. She's not here to defend herself. Don't get attacking her voice, mate. Oh no, she is here. She's definitely here to defend herself. That's completely legitimate. Okay, it is.
You got any personal evidence of psychedelics, James? I can imagine not. Straight as a die.
Yeah. So my personal reflections are, first of all, obviously we know lots of people with ADHD, don't we? Through the charity, through the podcast, through friends, family, etc. What I can say is, and this is obviously anecdotal, as is much of the evidence in rabbit ears of the effectiveness of psychedelics, is some of my friends, I'd say a good 2/3, have reported that they find it helps them more than the medication. Although not all of those friends have stuck with it, which suggests that, again, that kind of positive, almost bias towards wanting this to work, having read websites and blogs and seeing adverts, etc. I've had some really profound kind of statements saying, it's amazing. It's completely different. I got so much shit done in the first couple of days, but then a couple of weeks later, I've either heard that they've gone back to their meds or heard that they've stopped doing it, etc. And so I'd say is most of my friends have reported something positive, at least for a bit, on their ADHD meds or their mental health. In terms of my experiences, I've not microdosed for my ADHD because until recently, my ADHD meds have been really effective. I feel like they're less effective at the minute, and I don't know why. And we're going to do an episode on medication holidays at some point, although there's not a lot of evidence, because we think it's important. Again, lots of people ask questions about, should I stop taking it now and again to increase effectiveness? And I am definitely tempted to microdose, but largely because of that theory that you alluded to in the clumsily written psychoeducation section, Alex. If you look at what they do, the theory or the hypothesis, I don't know which it is, and I was a scientist for 20 years, it's kind of rock solid, Al. Hypothetically, if you look at how, particularly the classical psychedelics, what they do is they increase connectivity between the parts of the brain which don't communicate as well in ADHD. So they don't just switch off the default mode network. And we've already talked a little bit about how mind wandering could be absolutely essential to inattentiveness. Actually, it could just be mind wandering a lot of the time. And switching that off is therefore theoretically hypothetically beneficial for ADHD. But equally, the parts of the brain, those networks, remember, the brain works in networks that don't talk to each other as well in ADHD, start to talk to each other. So that the theory kind of makes sense. I have surprisingly, Alex, I have some experience with psychedelics.
Never.
But generally macrodosing, not microdosing. And what I would say is that I don't think psychedelics should be used in the same way as other recreational drugs for a laugh. They are a laugh, obviously, but I think not they shouldn't be. I think they have far greater use than that, and you can even self-guided therapeutize effectively on psychedelics because of the way in which they disengage the part of the brain that's related with negative emotions, the amygdala, because the way in which the connection between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, the very front of the fronty bit on the right, as Alex likes to call it, which is kind of ADHD central. And therefore, I've had some pretty profound realizations about my mental health. So ADHD obviously rarely comes alone. Everybody knows I've got all the things, including lots of self-loathing, low self-esteem, mood disorder, etc. And I, on a macro dose of a psychedelic, absolutely saw for the first time when I questioned myself where my damage was and visualized my damage as this black rotating ball with crackling energy. And I realized actually that all of my self-loathing actually comes from being rejected as a kind of 12-year-old boy and not having that many friends. I thought you were going to ding them for some reason.
I was, and then I had a moment, an unusual moment of self-breaking.
Yes, well done.
Yeah.
Some good
cognitive
inhibition.
Cancelled was strong.
Yes.
That one.
So for me, I understood finally why I hate myself, actually, because it comes back to those formative years when I was neurodevelopmentally delayed, when I wasn't that popular, and that was the seed of all of my hatred and self-loathing. And therefore, in terms of the coexisting conditions of ADHD, my experience with macro, not microdosing, is it definitely helped me understand why the self-hatred, James.
And can you take another load and see why I hate you?
Actually, I probably can, to be fair. I can come up with some reasons.
Agreed.
Yeah, so my personal reflections are, if you're going to do it, this is the hardest part. When I the talks I do.
Your tiny little pointless, depressing talk.
I've got one on Tuesday on this subject, psychedelics and ADHD, and lots of people obviously come and ask. I can't get it, and obviously, I'm not a dealer anymore, and I don't want to. I don't want to say to people, well, you can find the dark web, or you can go out searching in local areas. So what I would say is, if you are considering doing this, do it as safely as possible, which isn't easy, actually, because you're not buying something that is licensed, regulated, tested, given to you at a set dose. If you do find people that sell microdosing capsules, you're trusting them that it's A, the thing you said it is, and B, at the dose you wanted it to be. So just be safe if you're going to do it. Oh God, what about you, Sam?
Yeah, Sam, what are your?
I haven't prepared anything, so well, I haven't tried it. Like James, I can't. I've got nothing. I've got nothing now.
I mean, you could try saying something that you like factually correct that you've just made up. That might work because it'll be fine.
You can't break a badger's jaw.
Yeah, whilst on psychedelics. No, you can't.
Yes. No, you can't. Exactly. Thanks for that, Sam. That was
cheers, Sam,
really insightful. Alex, what about you?
Nope, definitely not for me. No, I cannot take anything that means I lose control of my already weak grasp on reality and my own mind. I am really aware that mind-altering drugs are a big thing in ADHD world, and our tribe is with the lowest threshold for entry of any tribe in the world. And I famously self-medicated with cocaine for a long time for crossword-related reasons. And you've got a big butt, James. What I really want to know is, are there other ADHD people out there, and I'm sure there are, that hate any kind of trippy drugs, even marijuana, or like hate anything that disconnects you from reality? Like me, I absolutely hate it. I need to be in control. I think it's because I don't have a lot of metacognition. I don't know what reality is, my own reality often. So anything that I'm kind of clinging on anyway. So, James, do you remember that one single time I tried that round mushroom thing you made me eat that was delicious?
Oh, yes. Yeah, everyone else had tissue up their nose, and you were saying, "Oh, it's very piquant. It reminds me of."
It was nice. It was nice. The effects were horrific. I couldn't tell time. I mean, I'm not very good at that at the best times, but I was looking at a clock and I didn't know what time it was. It was awful, awful, awful. I also want to say, like, from a personal perspective, we're not a political organization, but some people think that the war on drugs is actually just a political attack on race and class, on working classes. I mean, they're correct. It is. That's exactly what it was. I'm not. It's not a secret that I'm a sober person these days, and I can't do these sorts of things. And yet, it remains true that by regulating and decriminalising drugs, we could protect and support people much more effectively. That's my personal reflection.
And importantly, get more research, because it's so difficult. Friend of the show and fellow trustee Eric has been doing some work. Eric grows brain cells in a jar. Alex used to do a similar thing. But one of the studies from people's brains, ex vivo, and the licenses and the regulations required just to get a bit of ketamine and stick it on some brain cells, is difficult. And that's a legal kind of licensed drug which they give to children, when they've broken a leg. Trying to get sufficient regulatory approval and licenses in place to use illicit substances, which you can't get from. I remember looking at the Sigma, which used to be the name of a scientific provider catalog, and seeing you could buy absolutely pure cocaine in there. And I thought, that's interesting. Obviously, I wasn't allowed. But by legalizing and decriminalizing, the research will become easier.
I feel I may have intimated that they give horses ketamine for a broken leg. They don't. They shoot them.
It's amazing. Okay. There's no time for our weekly game of What's James Lost. Sam's very quiet at the minute. What's James Lost, Forgotten, or Mislaid this week? Are you ready, Al? You're 9-8, I believe. Do you fucking? Is that the first time you've done that on air? Because you do that before we start every fucking episode.
I forgot that we were on air.
Oh, by the way, I've realised the start credits are longer than 7 seconds. So, when we don't swear for the first 7 seconds.
Yeah.
It's already gone. The music at the start is longer than 7 seconds.
Does that count? They don't.
I assume so. I don't know. Anyway.
Great, good timing for that, mate. Really helpful. Little editorial chat.
Anyone would think that I've got multiple streams of information racing through my brain at any one time. Actually, that's me taking on Sam's persona. I should have done it in her voice, right? So
the producer will edit that in post, so don't all of this. Go on.
Yeah, the tech guy will do it, right? Yeah. So, as you know, I bought a car this weekend.
I do.
And the story behind that, which we'll talk about in Thursday's episode, is very, very, very ADHD.
It really is.
But I also sold my previous car and successfully sold it. And oh god, actually, I've got to do something. The problem is that I lost one of the things that I put in the advert, and that they've been very understanding, which is kind of needed when you're moving a car on. So, did I lose the logbook for the car?
Yeah.
For those that aren't listening in the UK, this is like your registration document for the car. It shows that you own it. So did I lose a logbook? Option B, did I lose the second key, which was in the listing? People really like second keys, I think they're quite expensive to get hold of. People often in the past have said, has he got 2 keys, mate?
Yeah, they're like 200 quid, aren't they?
Yeah, even if they're women, they have the same tone of voice, ironically. and finally, did I lose the manual, which has all the service stamps in there for the car?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. That is a really good one. None of those are very funny.
No. Log. You can make something out. You can make something out of log, because I've chogged toilets and I poo a lot.
I see. It's not a literal log, though, is it? It's just the word we use.
Yes, it is.
I'm not going to do funny jokes because they're all boring. I'm going to guess. I think you lost the logbook. No, I've changed my mind.
Oh, you changed your mind. Yeah, we'll take the final answer.
Okay, my final answer then. I'll say logbook.
You utter fucking Jesus Christ! You cunt on a tap.
Stop using the C-bomb.
I can't help it.
Did I win again accidentally?
Yes, you're 10-8 up. Yes,
yes.
The lovely couple that came down to buy the car. obviously I said, have you got the logbook? And I said, yep. And then Sam and I spent a good hour and a half going through every single piece of paper in the house. Bear in mind, I know for a fact it is/was in the filing cabinet in the bit that says car. I've fucking seen it in an envelope.
Where else would it be? You probably put it somewhere safe for selling reasons. Not in the book, not in the bit that says car. No, under
exactly. Yeah, it'll be in the loft or the garage in a sandwich box or something.
Safe
and they were very understanding, but obviously I then told them, no, it's okay. You can apply for a new logbook when you've gone home, and got a message last night saying, sorry, mate, you're going to have to apply for the logbook and send it to him. Yeah. Yeah, they're very understanding. 10-8. I'm gutted. We'll see in part 3. I'm too gutted. I'm sorry. Bye. Trumpet. Welcome back to part 3 of episode, I don't know because I can't read things, of a podcast whose name I can't remember. And in part 3, we give tips. Alex.
Yes, Sam.
No follow-ups. What are your top tips?
Oh, good question, Sam. I tell you what, I've got one thing to say, which is illegal drugs are not regulated. You do not know what that is. What you're buying is not what you think it is, almost certainly, or certainly not only what you think it is. Even if you do know what it is, you don't know how much is in it, because the purity is different than where they make it. It's not regulated. So my honest main tip here is, if you can, advocate and fight for law change to support research, to support following evidence, and for you to follow evidence yourselves. Even if the evidence doesn't say what we want it to do, we often get people angry with us for not saying you should definitely use marijuana, you should definitely promote marijuana, you should definitely promote LSD. And James is, let's say, he's not anti-drugs, but we follow the evidence. Even if we desperately want psychedelics to be the cure-all for everything, it doesn't mean they are. So we need more research. That's my tip here. My other tip is definitely never go to Amsterdam with James. Fucking hell.
Ooh. Nearly ruined my stag do, didn't you? It was amazing. As people know, what did you do on my stag do with Jeddy?
Yeah, coffee shops of Amsterdam. That's what you're supposed to do.
Coffee shop, but you have museums and parks, I believe, as well, wasn't it?
And coffee shops where we drank coffee.
Yeah. The rest of us did not leave the flat. Sam, what about you? Well, I think from all the literature I've read, that actually the evidence for psychedelics in use in other psychiatric conditions is pretty robust. Alex.
Do you, Sam? More than ADHD?
Much more. There were 1,000 clinical trials in the 50s alone looking at guided therapy. And we know that, for example, the doses needed are very low.
More offensive than the normal stuff.
Yep. Sometimes even just one guided, it's too brummy, isn't it? Stoke.
I know that is not even in the top 10 things wrong with it.
I know. So yeah, it could work for ADHD. I haven't done it, but top tips again. Yeah, as Alex said, try and be safe. Thanks, Sam. That was I was surprised you've read as much of the literature as you have, actually. Yeah, I have. And maybe listened really to my talks. No, I haven't.
It seems really odd, James, that even now Sam hasn't asked you what you think. You think in this one particular instance she might have done.
James, thanks, Sam. Yeah. So this is really important. Actually, this typic spunk trumpet spunking isn't just for psychedelics. It's for all supplements, all things that are not medically regulated compounds. Everything is a chemical. Everything is a chemical. There's no good chemicals. There's no bad chemicals. There are just the responses that people have to chemicals.
Jelly babies are a good chemical.
They're not, Alex. Jelly babies are the worst sweet.
No.
I like chocolate. She actually does like chocolate.
Chocolate. What is it?
Basically, it's the dry kind of shavings and powder that comes off really cheap chocolate, which apparently in Stoke-on-Trent you could buy in the pick and mix as a bag of just like chocolate. But yeah, it's fucking awful. I've had it once. Anyway, thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
Yes. So everything's a chemical, and there's no good or bad ones. But in the world of supplements and in the world of illicit substances, there is no regulator. There is no testing. There are very rarely anything like high evidence kind of clinical trials. So whether you're trying lion's mane, whether you're trying omega-3, whether you're trying, other weirdly named plant-based compounds, they've still got chemicals in them.
Even CBD oil, right? There's loads of different things that claim to be that. There's no real rules for it.
No, exactly. And most of the CBD oil that you buy kind of legally from shops or on the internet has a tenth of the dose that is used in trials that use CBD as a therapy.
Which
so often
don't even have very great results anyway. It's very frustrating out there.
Exactly. So if you take that kind of on board, that actually everything's a chemical, and anything can kill, even water. Too much water, you can hyperhydration, and that can stop your heart because of low levels of potassium in the blood, low concentration. I just didn't want Alex to correct me.
I thought your top topic was going to be, if you're doing psychedelic truffles, take loads of Diet Coke and stuff tissue paper up your nose.
Tissue paper up your nose, yeah.
Or put them on a salad.
Oh, Jesus. So that being said, stick tissue paper up your nose if you're taking truffles. No, it's not legal. Obviously, it's not legal. Now, while supplements are, and you can go to Holland and Barrett or Boots, other stores are available, and buy your I don't know, other supplements. They're not tested. A lot of them are made in countries that have questionable standards when it comes to what they put into the tablets that you take, and everyone seems to trust that these supplements are good for us when in some cases there's evidence that they're not. Now, when you're looking at illicit substances, it's that times, I'll get this wrong, Alex will complain, maybe 3 times 5, in terms of what you're getting, because the people that sell these substances, sometimes, particularly with psychedelics, it might be your mate that knows where mushrooms grow, or where mushrooms grow and you know which ones to pick, and therefore there's an element of at least what you're picking if you are a mushroom enthusiast. But if you're buying stuff off somebody, you don't know what it is. You don't know what the dose is. And therefore, again, it's about being safe. It's all about safety first. We're not advising you to do this or try this, but I think it's important we present the evidence, because lots of people are. Now, psychedelics are generally a safe-ish class of compounds, in that if you look at the evidence in trials when kind of
pure and regulated.
When it's pure and regulated, I think in the first 700 LSD guided trips, there was 1 adverse reaction. And in terms of Professor David Nutt's work, these are tolerable and relatively safe compounds. But, and it's a massive but, not for everybody. Not everybody responds the same. It's the same with any medication. It's the same with any supplement. It's the same with any chemical. There will be people that respond. There will be people that don't respond. And there will be people who have an adverse reaction. That's why we're not advocating or saying do this. We're just providing the evidence. So if you're going to do it, just try and be as safe as you can. Right then. Sam's got nothing to add, so I suppose that was episode 104 of the ADHD Adults podcast, which wasn't catastrophizing, maybe about the state of drug laws, but was about ADHD and psychedelics. If by a miracle you enjoyed this episode, why not support the charity on the link provided? Because otherwise Alex is going to have to paint his head bright red and pretend to be one of those toadstools that kills you if you don't cook it properly. It's not really round. Well, I suppose it's round from the top. Anyway, if you want to get in touch, contact us on the socials or on Discord. See you Thursday. Bye.
Bye. Bye all.
Trigger warning klaxon. Klaxon, 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 big klaxon. Trigger warning klaxon. Klaxon, 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 klaxon. Trigger warning klaxon. Klaxon, klaxon, klaxon.